All right, guys, we're back with Unquestionable, and today I'm joined by a super special guest. I'm really interested about the things we're going to talk about today. I'm joined by Mr. Neil Waters of the Thylacine Awareness Group of Australia. So welcome, Neil.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So as we were kind of talking before we started recording, I've been super interested in the possibility ever since I was a kid of the thylacine still being an existing creature that is still roaming around the world. But before we get too deep into, the evidence available for that, can you maybe let the audience know a little bit about the thylacine and what a thylacine is? Because I'm assuming there's probably a couple people who are listening probably have no idea what we're even talking about.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's more commonly known as a Tasmanian tiger because, in recent history, it was known to exist in Tasmania because when the white settlers came here in the early 1800s, they started to see them, and before too long, they discovered that they may be a threat to their sheep. So, the shepherds and stuff, so they started persecuting them. But it's a really unusual animal. It's a marsupial. So it's got a pouch like a kangaroo, but it's got a backward facing pouch like a wombat. So the young go in from the rear because it's a four-legged creature. It's a unusual looking thing in the sense that it looks like a dog, and it's kind of evolved to fill that niche of a wolf. But it sort of acts like a cat in its behavior to a degree, the way it hunts and things, and it runs like a horse. So it's a real peculiar beast. They've got stripes along the rear of the rump that seem to appear in the tail on some individuals. They're not terribly huge, but the males can get to a reasonable size. We've got sightings of them being as big as an Alsatian or bigger than a greyhound. So the males can get to a reasonable size. Females are a little bit smaller. She has up to 4 young, and when she has a litter, they call them pups, but I tend to call them joeys because that's what we call marsupial kangaroos. So I call them joeys, but some people call them pups. It doesn't really matter. And they only breed every couple of years. I don't think they breed annually. I think they're quite slow growing and a slow breeder. And the young will stay with mum till they're, quite adolescent. So they're almost not fully grown, but they're at a reasonable size when they finally leave mum. Gotcha. They prey on other marsupials, birds, lizards, all sorts of things. They do take sheep occasionally, but they're primarily, going to go for their native food, I think.
Gotcha. So they were never and still aren't a danger to humans, right?
Well, there's a bit of conjecture about that. There's no actual stories, as far as I'm aware, of people being attacked by them. I'm sure if you went near a lair and it had some joeys in there, you might end up in a bit of strife. They are very curious. They're known to stalk people and follow them. The first sighting I had, I was stalked, and it scared the crap out of me, to be honest. But it wasn't that big an animal, so I don't think I was ever in any real danger. But I think they're very curious because they're the apex predator, and when someone bigger than them is cruising around, they sort of want to know who's in their zone, I guess. Yeah. So they come in for a look, and they will follow you. There's quite a few records of them following people.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's pretty good description there. So I'm curious because you kind of when you speak about the thylacine, you speak about it as if it's alive today. So I guess in short, why are we even having this conversation? Why why do you think that the thylacine is still alive today as opposed to being extinct? And I think it was the 1930s is when it was declared an extinct species.
Now, the last captive animal died in 1936, but they were actually declared extinct in 1986.
Okay.
So it has to be missing for 50 years before that can happen.
Gotcha.
On a world standard. I guess I've seen 3.
Okay.
The third one I saw was quite recently in March last year, and it was just under the headlights. But I've seen a lot of animals under the headlights in Tasmania and on the mainland. And this thing had eyes like golden coloured diamonds. They were the sparkliest eyes I've ever seen under headlight ever. And you see a lot of animals in Tasmania. There are, literally millions of animals on the roads at night in Tassie. There's a lot of roadkill.
Right.
But the reason why we're having this conversation, I guess, is because of this stuff, and governments wanting to make lots of this, and wildlife and conservation often gets in the way, I'm afraid. Yeah. And it would be a fool to say that this hasn't had an influence on its extinction declaration, and the agenda of forestries in Tasmania in particular. It's just scientific ignorance on the mainland that won't accept that they're there. There has been a couple that were found in caves in the 1960s on the Nullarbor in South Australia and Western Australia that were so fresh that they had black goo under them from decomposing and maggot casings next to them. But the scientists did some radiocarbon testing, and they were at least 2,000 years old, with maggot casings next to them.
Interesting.
So we have had a couple of specimens on the mainland that have been found. There's rumours of them being found and snatched up by national parks, and they disappear into the ether. That's happened a few times on the mainland as well. But in Tassie, a lot of people are employed by forestries. The animal still persists in Tasmania, even though forestries is a big industry. And we need timber, we need paper, we need toilet paper, especially during COVID.
That's right.
So you can't expect industries to be completely shut down. You would just hope that governments and industries would be at the world's best standard with the way they perform to try and protect the environment to the best of their capacity.
Gotcha. So do you think that's that there's some sort of, I guess, conspiracy, I guess you could call it, to kind of cover up the existence of the thylacine? Do you think that the government is purposely trying to cover up its existence?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't like the word conspiracy because immediately you end up with a pointy tinfoil hat on your head, the minute you say that. But there's just too many rumors and too many stories. They can't all be bullshit, Some of them have to be true. And there are literally thousands of sightings of this animal, but we have a government, not just the state government in Tasmania, but we have a federal government in Australia that just wants to drag their heels because it serves their purpose. And the establishment, and when I say the establishment, I mean the noted scientists that are the so-called experts in this field. I would refer to them as ostriches.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, I guess kind of going off that and going off of the preservation of the thylacine, tell me a little bit more about TAGOA, the Thylacine Awareness Group of Australia. What's exactly your guys' mission with the group? What does the daily... The
name says it all. I decided to start it off because I had my first sighting in 2010, then I had another sighting in 2014, and not long after that, I got quite sick. I had pulmonary embolism, and I was bedridden for about 3 weeks recovering. Yeah. So I got on the laptop and started researching, and because I thought I'd seen 2 of these things, there's got to be something more to this. Got on Facebook, found a couple of groups, made myself unpopular because of my strong beliefs of what I'd seen. And I'd also found some prints as well just after I had the second sighting. And it slowly but surely led to me starting my own Facebook group, I suppose. So I had a forum, and my original idea was to give witnesses somewhere to come forward with their information without being mocked or ridiculed by narrow-minded twits. And I caused a lot of arguments. I had a lot of arguments online in the early days. I try not to argue with people so much. Sure. I was adamant that I could convince everyone that I was right and they should follow me. Well, that doesn't work in life. And you've just got to let people come at their own pace and believe what they want to believe. And that's just a fact of life with anything, really. So I started the group in November 2014, and the whole idea was to raise awareness, because what triggered it was I went to the South Australian Museum because I'm originally from Adelaide in South Australia. And I just casually went into the information section where they answer a lot of public questions and you can bring in bugs and stuff to get identified. And I just sort of said to the fella behind the counter, I said, "Oh, do you get any thylacine sightings reported to you?" And he said, "Oh, just wait here for a sec." He went out the back and he opened up this filing cabinet. He came out with this folder about, this thick, probably 4 inches thick, and opened it up on the bench and just started going through them and showing them all to me. And there was not hundreds, but there was over 100. There was dozens of these sightings in there. And I just sort of said to him, I said, "Do you investigate this stuff?" And he said, "No, we haven't got the time or resources for that. We just write it down, put it in here and shove it in the filing cabinet." And so I said, "Oh, any chance I could get a copy?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." So I raced off to office supply shop down the road and I bought myself a little portable scanner that you put a couple of AA batteries in and just drag it over a document. The next day I went straight in there after work and I scanned all these documents thinking that they were going to put them away and lock them away and I'll never get to see them again. I ended up with this whole big file of all these sightings, and some of them were quite old, some of them were reasonably recent, and there was phone numbers in there. So I started ringing people up and they were like, "Oh God, that was years ago." And I said, "Oh, would you have a chat to me about it?" And they said, "Sure." So I started meeting people and getting their stories, and I was just blown away, all this information. And I had no idea that they were in South Australia up until, the middle of 2014. So once I got all these sightings and started to realize the areas where they were occurring, I thought, well, no one else is investigating it. I've got all this info. I might as well investigate it. And that was where the obsession began, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I mean, if I was in the same boat as you, a couple of years ago, I was kind of down a little bit of the same type of rabbit hole to where I was really into just investigating extinct or supposedly extinct species and, looking at like cryptids and stuff. And I kind of fell down a rabbit hole of investigating this stuff. So I would be in the same boat as you. If I came across a file,
my pain.
Yeah, exactly. I would do the exact same thing. And like I said before we started recording, I have been interested in the thylacine for years. I remember, I think it was like middle schools when I first saw like the video of the thylacine in the zoo, and when it was opening its jaw and seeing, do their jaws dislocate? Because I mean, they're able to from the videos.
No, they've got 120-degree gape though, so it's almost a flip top head.
That's crazy.
But if you ask a scientist, they'll tell you that they didn't have very strong jaws and they only ate little animals,
I don't know, because just by looking at the videos, that looks like a pretty scary looking mouth when it
it's designed to bite a kangaroo or a wombat on the neck. And if you have a look at a wombat, they virtually don't have a neck. They're just all muscle and fat, and they're stocky as. So something that's got a jaw that opens that wide clearly has got the capacity to bite something reasonably large. And if it's a reasonably large animal, then you kind of naturally assume that it's going to have a pretty powerful bite.
Yeah, that's fair. So what kind of did the Tasmanian tigers, did they have any predators themselves besides humans, like any natural predators out in the wild?
Some of the indigenous folks in Tasmania did actually hunt them and eat them. I think there was about 5 or 6 language groups or different tribes, to use the politically incorrect word, but we call indigenous folks Aboriginal people in Australia. They have different language groups, so they speak different languages. But yeah, some of them did hunt them and some of them did revere them. So they didn't all hunt them. There is another predator in Australia that's also rumoured to extinct, that a scientist will tell you has been extinct for 10,000 years, and that's a marsupial lion, Thylacines carnifex, and that's a semi-arboreal animal as well. And they're rumoured. There's a lot of sightings in Australia still of these animals. That's the animal behind the dreaded drop bear stories. Have you heard about the drop bears?
It sounds familiar. It's ringing a bell, but
well, people make a lot of jokes about koalas as
Right.
being the drop bear, and they Photoshop koalas and put big fangs in their mouth.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the drop bear season, and a lot of people think it's a real thing. Well, originally the drop bear story came from the 1800s with people citing a bear-like animal with big nasty teeth that was in trees that did jump out and did scare the crap out of people. And it's quite reasonable to assume that with hundreds of these sightings over the years, there's got to be something in it, just like mainland thylacines. And there's quite a few scientists that have mentioned these thylacios historically as well as being very much a part of the Australian fauna. In the 1920s, they were mentioned in Australian fauna records as a living animal, but no one had managed to capture one, and that was in Queensland. So yeah, they would definitely prey on thylacines because they're that little niche above the thylacines.
Right.
But again, we're getting into the obscure, no one's found a dead one, so they can't possibly exist realm, you see.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Yeah. So kind of going on, I've noticed a couple times, when you've mentioned the scientists, you've put quotation marks around them. So for those of you who may not be listening, I was throwing those quotation marks. So what makes you throw those quotation marks around the scientists? Are you personally sending off data to labs, or
I do send off scat samples to get tested for DNA when I get a real fresh one.
Gotcha.
We did have a hit once with a scat sample, but the reason why I use the quotation marks is because basically the science officially controls the narrative, okay? Now, if you're a scientist, you're meant to be open to the evidence that's presented. But sadly, in Australia, when it comes to this subject, 90% of the scientists out there aren't open at all, and they're quite closed, narrow-minded, arrogant, and just outright rude. And some of the leading scientists in this field are some of the rudest scientists that you could try and talk to. And I don't think that that's very healthy for science as a whole. It's not healthy as a leading role model in this field of endeavor. And I'm by no means trained. I'm by no means a scientist. I'm a gardener by trade. But I'm passionate and I'm interested. And I've spoken to hundreds of people who all have had very similar experiences quite independently of each other. And I've found a lot of footprints that don't match any kind of dog breed on the planet, and they're quite large. But again, when you speak to the scientists, they're too big to be a thylacine, so they must be dog. Well, they're not dog. I've had dog experts tell me they're not dog. They're of no known breed of dog on the planet. So what are they?
Right.
You know what I mean? I really want science to get on board and say, yes, there's something in this. And to a degree, some of them have. Online, there's a thing called Natural Worlds, which is the official online thylacine museum. And it's a fantastic resource. It's got some great stuff on there. And in the opening paragraph on that website now, there's two scientists that set it up. I think it's Stephen Slateholm and Cameron Campbell. They openly say in there that they believe that the animal is an endangered species because there is just too many credible sightings for everybody to be drunk on their way home from the pub. So, and so why can't we go that step further and say, all right, let's get together and have a look at what you've got? Well, no one wants to talk to me because I'm a bit of a big mouth, I suppose, and I just do what I want. And I don't get funded by any of them, so I'm not under their rules and regulations of the way they conduct themselves and all that sort of caper. So, and that's fine. I don't care if they don't want to talk to me. And look, I've released plenty of ambiguous photos and videos, but whatever we get, we put out there. Yeah. That's it. That's always been our motto. If we find some proof, we're going to show people and we'll explain what we think. We'll argue with you. We'll fight about it. We'll block you from the group, whatever, it goes pear-shaped often. But, you got to, scientists weren't talking about this animal when I started this group. And to a degree, I'll take a little bit of a claim of fame on that one because we've raised the awareness. We've stirred the pot. And, they're actually talking about it now. And, unofficially in Tasmania, they're looking for it. They haven't announced it, but I know they're looking for it. University of Tasmania they're doing a fauna survey in the southwest of Tassie.
Really?
But they're not looking for paddy melons, I can tell you.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's funny because it seems like we're both kind of in the same boat, but in different kind of realms. So, in this podcast, I investigate, alternative history and being able to question the modern narrative of history. And,
Good on you.
I feel like you're kind of in that same boat, but except you're questioning the thylacine and, the science behind the thylacine. And, the same thing with, just spreading the word, being able to say that you don't know. These scientists seem like they're very confident that the creature doesn't exist, but it's more so an I don't know question to me, because I've seen personally a lot of very convincing photos from yourself and from others, and videos as well. The only thing that I've really seen that's kind of thrown me off about a lot of thylacine photos and videos that I've seen, not necessarily from you, but just from what I've seen on, the internet.
Yes, it's all right. My dog's getting a bit uppity.
That talkative dog. So what I've noticed is a lot of critics out there are criticizing the photos and videos, and they're looking at the heels of the animals. And they're saying that, a lot of these videos, the back heel of the animal is too high to be a thylacine in a lot of these cases. And they equate them to being like a dog or, like a German Shepherd or a fox or something. But I've seen quite a few videos that show the short heel. In fact, just before you called in, I was watching a video of a very convincing video of a thylacine.
Which one was that?
I don't remember the channel. Oh shoot, I closed out of it. But it was some guy, he was like a Mexican guy. And he claimed to have been in some abandoned zoo, and he was wandering around there.
That's Photoshop.
Is it? It was convincing, and I was watching a couple things about it, and I wasn't sure about it.
It's
and
a
I'm
real
like, that looks
thylacine.
pretty damn
It's just
real.
not in Mexico. That's all.
You know what? That's fair. Why didn't I think about that? It's from fucking Mexico, guys. Don't listen to what I say. Jesus Christ. So I'll just edit that whole part out. I just sound like an idiot. No, I'm kidding.
Never say never.
Hey,
that's
never
one
say
thing
never.
I learned through all of this is never ever tell people what they're telling you is bullshit and wrong.
There
never.
You go.
Just listen to what they say, take it on board. The more far out it is, usually the more true it becomes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, why did I, that's the thing is it's you guys who's listening. It is 7 o'clock in the morning where I'm at. Neil's nice and awake at like 11:30 at night over there, but oh my gosh, what am I thinking? Yeah, that's Mexico. But I mean, hey, what if it was a chupacabra or something? I don't know. But
yeah, look, chupacabra is a real thing, but it's not a thylacine.
That would be a plot twist. If
it's not a I don't know what it is. It's a weird looking thing. I've seen some great videos and photos of a dead one.
Really,
he's got these two weird round things on his butt. It's like you plug it into something almost. It's really weird.
It's like a little robot.
I've seen some great. I remember looking at chupacabra videos. Probably just before I started the group. Actually, it was back in my early days of YouTubing and looking at weird stuff, I guess. But yeah, mate. Honestly, there's some good videos out there. Look, we've put out a couple that are probably maybe not. I think of all the stuff we've put out. The one that's in our doco at the very end, the stripy bum, where it's just sitting off camera and you can see the stripes on its backside. Right. In the very first frame of that clip, you see its ear just for a second. And it's a very low, wide, round ear. There's no way that's a wallaby. Absolutely not. That's a juvenile thylacine sitting there grooming itself, and the bugger wouldn't get right on camera for me, Right. That was 2015. I caught that little bit of footage off that trail camera. And that little baby that I released in February, March, the cat brigade came out. And, no, it's a cat. It's a cat.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about that, because I was looking at stuff about that, and almost every person that I watched, read, they said it's a cat turning its head, and it's a cat running away from the frame or something like that. So what do you have to
watched the
say?
new clip that I produced on our YouTube channel only a couple of weeks ago, where I interview a lady called Norma Baker?
I don't think I watched that one.
Okay, I've only just put it out, so it's quite recent, 2 or 3 weeks ago. The lady is a fauna rescue person, so she's hand raised literally hundreds of paddy melons in her career. She's been doing it for over 60 years. 60 years experience
right,
handling paddy melons. Now, Nick Mooney, when he did that report on that photograph, he said that it's a marsupial. He never once said that it's a cat. Now, he knows that it's a marsupial because when you have a look at that back foot, it's a shiny, leathery back hock. Now, only marsupials have those. Cats do not have them. It's that simple. There's only one breed of cats that have a smooth rear foot, a hock, but they don't have any hair. They're bald. And I think they're from Mexico, actually. So it's clearly a marsupial. That's unequivocal. And the cat brigade can say whatever they want, but that is a juvenile marsupial. Now, Norma went on the record to say unequivocally, there's no way on earth that's a paddy melon. So she couldn't say, I think it's definitely a thylacine, but she said it's definitely not a paddy melon. So it isn't a quoll because it doesn't have spots, and the tail and everything's wrong for it to be a quoll anyway. It's definitely not a devil. It's not a rat. It's not a bandicoot. It's not a wombat. It's not any other kind of four-legged marsupial. So if it's not a thylacine, but it's a marsupial, what is it? We're running out of options. Right. When I did that video walking down the street, all happy with a can of beer, celebrating because I knew we'd got something worth getting excited about, I did say quite clearly, the mother and the father are ambiguous, but the baby is bang on the money. Now, what the hell is a baby predator doing hanging out with two paddy melons? That's always been my argument. It just makes no sense. So the mother is very ambiguous, but you can quite clearly see she's got a wide head because the line of her ear is almost out to her rib cage. Now, paddy melons have a wide bum and a narrow head. So if that's an adult paddy melon, why has it got a long linear back and rib cage coming out near the ear? So the ear line it's got a broad head. There's no way that first animal is a paddy melon.
Right,
but,
right.
The media had fun, and that there's a couple of twits online. I'm not going to mention their names because I'm not going to give them any free air, but there's a couple of twits on YouTube that know more than everybody. And have had a field day at my expense, but I don't give a shit. They can say what they want, but they got so desperate. They talk about my weight and are we a hate group and all this crap. They just make up anything to get a bit of airplay.
Yeah, well,
that is a baby thylacine. I would bet my life on it. I know that's a baby thylacine. Yes, it's not as crystal clear as we would hope because it didn't quite turn sideways. But the photo of the face from the night before isn't a quoll, isn't a devil, isn't a cat, and isn't a dog. So we're running out. And I'm positive that that's the little baby's face the night before. It was running around in the ferns there, misbehaving while its mum and dad were out hunting for it. The next day, mum and dad grabbed it and they all left in a line, and the dad followed to protect from the rear, like they're known to do. And that little baby is probably now, it's 18 months later or something.
Right.
So it's probably, an adolescent now. It's probably as big as my Kelpie dog here. So
nice.
If it's still alive, hopefully. I got so excited because that was proof of breeding. We've got a baby one. That's
very
something
true
to get excited about.
Yeah. Have you, so in the area that you got those like initial pictures that really blew up on, the news around your area? I mean, I did a Google search of you, and I mean, there were quite a few news channels that were covering your photos, your videos, your YouTube video where you were celebrating. Of course, Vice even got on the train and had you on there, and, you interviewed with Vice. It's like, if it wasn't something interesting, why would all these news channels be covering it if it was just a cat or something? It was that demonstrable to just be a cat or a patamelon or something. Why are all these news stations so interested in it and so convinced by it?
Well,
Yeah.
they weren't, because they hadn't seen it. I made them wait for 2 weeks. Then they kicked the shit out of me after that.
That's fair.
But I like I said, I don't really care what they think, because I know in my heart what I got a photo of, and I've had quite a few well-educated people have a look at it and say, no, it's definitely not a paddy melon. So, and we had a vet with 30 years experience, and he said, look, I'll give you 80% on it being a thylacine, but it just not smiling at the camera. I want to see its face and its side, with those stripes down the side. So,
right.
Better luck next time. That's all good.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, super interesting stuff. I was drawing a blank on my question for you, but so my question would be is what can me as a normal person all the way in Michigan who's super interested in the thylacine and wants to help however I can, what can I do to help your search for the thylacine all the way in Michigan?
Well, it's really simple, actually. We've just, we don't constantly, but we constantly attempt to, because I'm the one that does it, but I'm pretty busy. But we update our website quite regularly. We do have a sponsorship thing for trail cameras, so people can actually sponsor a trail camera. Costs $120 Australian a year, so it's about $2.50 a week or something.
Right.
Which isn't much.
No, not at all.
And what that does is it pays for the trail camera, it pays for the batteries, it pays for a couple of SD cards, and puts $20 petrol in my tank to drive around and do all this stuff, right? So we're not exactly making a lot of money out of it, but people can sponsor a trail camera. And then every 3-4 months, when I bring in the cameras, I go through all the cards, and any good photos, good videos, I'll make a zip file and email them off to the sponsor, and they can have the joy of going through and seeing all of these really cool Australian animals firsthand. Yeah. And we have a bit of a one-on-one banter. I'm pretty accessible. People can email me or ring me and talk to me. I make myself available as much as I can, and get to know me and get to know why I do all these crazy things. And we also have basic membership as well, because we're actually an incorporated association. And that gives them, a little sew-on patch, and they get a bumper sticker and a certificate of thanks. And, I think a basic membership's $50, and then it's $120 a year to sponsor a camera. And yeah, it's really cool. I mean, we had a couple of school teachers in America that sponsored cameras, and one in the UK as well.
Nice.
So then, I'd email off all these photos and stuff, and they'd go through them with the kids, and the kids are learning about native animals, and they're seeing them in the wild doing their thing. And it's really cool, because it's a good learning tool, and it's simple, and it's, not that expensive. It's reasonably cheap. Not everyone's got a lot of money these days because of, the way the world is at the moment, but, and everything on our website's there. People can download and copy any of the photos on there and use it as a reference. Well, this is what Neil thinks a thylacine's footprint looks like. So maybe this is a bit of a guide, or, there's lots of info on there. There's our YouTube channel. If people watch our YouTube clips, we make about 0.5 cent or whatever it is every time they watch a YouTube clip with advertising. So we make a little bit of money out of that, and that goes back in the kitty and helps to pay for stuff. So I've actually just ordered 15 trail cameras. A friend of mine overseas helped me out and got them on special, some really good ones. Very cool. They're on their way.
Yeah, I was going to ask, one, how many trail cameras do you have out there right now? And two, have you caught anything relatively close to the clarity of the pictures from February, March of last year? Have you came across anything, I guess, bigger than those pictures?
No, I haven't got anything any clearer from our trail cameras. We've got about, I think we've got about 20, 25 cameras on the mainland. that are
Gotcha.
sponsored or managed by members from the group.
Nice.
Some of those are historical, like we've had some of the cameras have been out there for 5 years.
Wow.
Some of the mainland ones. And then Mark Taylor, who's the vice president of TAGOA, he manages about 15 of our cameras in South Australia. We get a lot of sightings from South Australia. We've had 3 from Victoria this year so far. The last one was last Monday night. And at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, Australian time, that interview will be on our YouTube channel for people to have a listen to.
Nice.
So that's with a guy called Matt Blake. That's the one you've got to look out for. So I
Very
interviewed him yesterday and sat up late last night editing it. Not that I'm much of an editor, but I made a little audio clip for it. In fact, I'm a terrible editor, but I'm getting there. So that comes out tomorrow. So people can support us just by being positive and manifest that little bugger. That's what we've got to do. It's the power of our minds to manifest these things.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, like I would say, go ahead and follow Neil and TAGOA on Facebook, Instagram. I gave him a follow on all that stuff, and some really interesting things. And you mentioned the Facebook group. I joined that Facebook group, and I'm looking at all the interesting stuff going on in there. Yeah, it's super interesting. So all in all, if we were to take away the photographic and video evidence, what is the number one thing besides the photos and videos that makes you say thylacines are real? What is the number one smoking gun for you?
Definitely the prints that I find.
Okay.
And a very, very tight, close second, if not equal place, would be the hundreds of people that I talk to that have seen it. There are thousands and thousands of sightings on record. Some of them are from tourists that have never even heard of the animal, and they describe it to a T. So I can't discount that. That, to me, I love people. People are great. Some people are terrible, but
that's fair.
The experience of people and getting to know people and learning about people and what makes them tick fascinates me. It always has.
Yeah.
So when you I just had a look at the group before. I've actually been banned from posting on Facebook for 6 days because of my political beliefs.
Oh, come on.
That's fine.
Political beliefs.
I've upset the cronies that run Facebook. But anyway, I just had a look at our group, and we've got 32 member requests. In those 32 members people that are trying to get in, 9 claim to have seen a thylacine. So what I do is I message them personally, welcome them to the group. I send them a friend request purely so they see the message request.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them want to talk to me, some of them don't. On average, about 2/3 of them are happy to chat to me, and then about 2/3 of those 2/3 are happy to do an interview. So nice. I'll get an audio recording, I'll smash it out on YouTube as soon as I can, and that just keeps the interest happening. It brings the trolls out to have another kick at Neil and a punch at Neil, and I hit block from our YouTube channel, and I don't have to read their bullshit anymore.
There you go.
So I love that block thing. It's like, yeah, you want to be constructively critical, that's fine. Right. But if you want to be an ass, hit the road. So I just boot them. I'm not interested in negative Nancy's. That I've got one troll that's been chasing me for years, and he pops up with a different ID all the time, but he's only got one personality. It's quite funny.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. I've seen a couple of videos out there of some, I guess, critics of you. So, I mean, I think I have an idea who you're talking about. We're not going to mention him here, but
some of them talk incredibly quick.
Yep. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between constructive criticism and just straight up putting people's ideas down. You can critique what people believe. You can ask questions like we're doing here. I'm just genuinely curious, but I'm not going to sit here and call you stupid, for your beliefs or nothing. If you feel like you've seen a thylacine, I legitimately want to know, and I want to see the evidence for it, because thylacines are out there. I want to know,
that's it. It's people are curious, and I don't know. I don't like to force sunshine up my own bum, but I think because I'm down to earth as much as possible, most people appreciate that, and I am approachable. People can email me, ring me, whatever they want to do, and I'll talk to them. And you know, there's a lot of people lack that. I think some people are a little bit too, you know, up themselves. And sadly, the more academic they become, the more they become like that, you know. And the other thing, when I was doing the inverted commas about scientists is you know, they've got millions of dollars to throw at trying to clone this thing, but they haven't got 5 cents to try and prove it's there, you know. It's always been a harsh criticism of mine, and I'll carry that one to the grave, because you know, like, and oddly enough, the same scientist that wrote the paper for the Thylacines extinction is the same scientist that popped up a few years later wanting to clone it.
Really?
You so want to talk conspiracies? There's one for you.
Yeah. Are they working on cloning it right now? Is that something that's going on?
There's another academic scientist that's trying to get funding to clone it, but you know.
Yeah. It's one of
I said to him, get your calipers out and do some real science, do some hard ass measuring. And, you know, but, you know, no, you've got to bring us DNA. We need DNA, you know. How did scientists do anything before DNA come along? You know, like, seriously, Calvin, it's like, how did we get here before we had DNA? Like, how did they recognize that that was a giraffe without DNA, you know?
That is a fair point.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, Neil, I've had such an awesome time. I've had a really interesting conversation with you. I've learned a lot of things about the thylacine that I didn't know before, and I've obviously still got a ton of research to do, and I'm obviously going to be following your work and the work of other people, part of the TAGOA group, that are advocating and still searching for something that is considered extinct. That's super interesting to me. You know, never stop looking, no matter who says it's extinct or not. Just never stop looking, because you never know. We rediscover species all the time.
That's right. It's exactly right. There's been probably about a dozen just of Australian species in the last 10, 15 years, you know, without the other ones around the world. Never, ever say never, my friend, because things pop up and all of a sudden they go, we need to rewrite the book, you know, because and look, if things keep popping up, Calvin, clearly their extinction modeling is flawed.
That's fair.
Well, we said it's extinct because we didn't find it. Well, did they actually leave their office, or did they just reference other scientists' papers to come up with a conclusion?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's fair. All right.
There's a thing called science, and then there's a thing called academia. And there's a real gray area in between them.
Oh yeah, I talk about that a ton in my show. I must have made that difference multiple times through my podcast. So you are right on the money with that. There's a difference between science and academia. Definitely. Yeah. I totally agree. But Neil, I had an awesome time. For people who are more interested in the thylacine, your work specifically, where can people find you, and where can people learn more about this super interesting creature?
Okay, so Thylacine Awareness Group of Australia.com.au. That's our website. Have a look at the gallery and have a look at the other page on there called The Evidence Thus Far. They're the 2 pages that I would recommend. There's a little bit of history. There's a little bit of did you know and all that sort of stuff on there. There's also the support factor with donating or joining TAGOA Tas Inc. The other thing I would recommend is just keep an eye on our Facebook group. I do have an Instagram account, but I don't have Instagram. Work that one out. So I need to get on there, I guess, one day. But one day, that's in the to-do list. And the other thing too is have a look at Natural World's the Thylacine Museum online, because it is a fantastic resource. And we've got a couple of scientists on there that are open-minded, not closed-minded. And they're willing to put their reputations on the line and actually say, we think it's endangered and not extinct. So kudos to them, you know. Awesome. I applaud that, you know.
Yeah, applaud, give them
that's where they need to be.
Yeah, it's all about just being open-minded. That's what this whole show is about. It's about questioning things that you're not necessarily supposed to question, or may get criticized for questioning. That's the whole point of the show. And that's why I have you on here, because I wanted you to defend yourself and defend the thylacine and why it exists. But once again, Neil, thank you so much. I had a really awesome interview with you, and I hope to talk with you again real soon. Maybe next time you find some really interesting photos or videos, or maybe when you just see one in person, you'll have to come back on the show and we'll have to take a look at some things.
We'll keep an eye on what I'm doing online, and I'm sure you'll know when to contact me.
Will do. All right. Thank you, Neil.
Good on you, Calvin. Thanks, mate. All the best.